Hello and welcome to this episode of Ways to Change Your Workplace with myself, Prina Shah. And I'm really happy today to welcome Robbie Samuels to the conversation. Robbie is based in Boston and you are soon moving home, I understand, Robbie. Fun
I'm
times
moving a
ahead.
lot closer to family. Yes, I'm
Yeah.
moving to Pennsylvania, which is adjacent to New York, New Jersey, where my family lives. So
Oh, nice.
closer, not close. Yeah.
Yeah. Beautiful. Today, Robbie, I'd like to talk to you about the topic of leverage your virtual network to grow your professional brand. And I know you are an expert in this area and so much more. I've done a little bit of stalking on all things Robbie. So your signature, your email signature, first off, just has so much. You are a virtual event design consultant. You're an executive Zoom producer. You're a TEDx speaker. You're an author. You've written for HBI. You've written for Forbes. You've written a lot, I know. You're a podcast host. And you're a business growth and strategist coach also. You do a lot.
Yeah, I recently learned this term multi-hyphenate.
Yes.
This and this and this. Yeah, I am that. I resemble that remark. Yeah, and in my mind, the thing that connects all of my interests and passions are relationships.
That's it, right? Human connection, completely so. And
Absolutely.
that's what I'd like to talk to you about today. But before we begin to getting into the conversation, can you tell me your story? Because it's really fascinating what you do. How did you get into it? Why did you get into it? And in your words, what do you do, please, Robbie?
Well, prior to let's see, 2014, I had spent a decade working in nonprofit, actually 15 years working nonprofit. In the last 10 years, I was organizing about 25 events a year for one organization. Plus, I was running 2 events a month, so another 24 a year for a meetup group that I founded that I ran for 11 years, and also running lots of conferences and unconferences, often just for fun. And so I love convening people. I love bringing people together. And the meetup group is where I started really thinking about networking and building relationships in a more thoughtful way, and not just winging a prayer, not just based on charisma, but thoughtfulness and planning and purposefulness. So I was training our regulars on how to be hosts, on how to be welcoming. And that turned into a talk called Art of the Schmooze that I presented that talk for the next decade. And along the way, wrote a book called Croissants versus Bagels, Strategic, Effective, and Inclusive Networking at Conferences, and did a TEDx on that topic, host a podcast called On the Schmooze, which I just hit 5 years. So I left my career, but when I did, I'd already spent 5 years speaking professionally. And so it was really about just deciding what audience I wanted to speak to and moving in that direction. Along comes the pandemic and all the things I'm known for, eye contact, business cards, shaking hands, and body language, just it isn't valuable or relevant for what 2020 was shaping up to be. And I really was trying to figure that question out. How do I show up and add value? So I met with my peer mastermind that week, and they kicked me in the pants and told me that networking for me wasn't something that only happened at conferences, because that had been my focus, was teaching people how to leverage in-person experiences. Although I didn't call them in-person experiences, I just called them events. And I wrote 9 Ways to Network in a Pandemic, which came out on March 12th, 2020. And that night I was thinking I should probably do one of these. Looking at the list, I saw virtual happy hour, and I thought, oh, I love hosting. Let me do that. And I actually posted in Dory Clark's Recognized Expert group, if I do this tomorrow at 5, anyone, can come. And I got a bunch of yeses right away. And I was like, okay, well then I guess I'm doing this. And at 2 p.m. the next day, I decided I needed to tell the world. So I posted it all over the place. And in the end, about 20 people came, a lot of Rexers actually. And that first Friday, March 13th, 2020, I've hosted that event ever since, every single Friday at 5 Eastern. And, I had spent in 2020, I was actually coaching entrepreneurs for this company. I had been coaching entrepreneurs for years. I'd run my own masterminds. I was hired by this company to coach their their entrepreneurs, and to also do a second role where I was overseeing 110 students going through a course about how to build an online course. So I have a lot of experience around business growth strategies, piloting something, research and research calls, and just generally like, how do you get something going? Well, I decided to basically put myself through those paces. So I recognized very early on, within the first few weeks, people were contacting me one-on-one to get advice about virtual. And I made a commitment in April that I was going to continue to host this weekly event. And I announced the pilot program that I launched in May. So May 2020, I ran a pilot 4-week program. I ran it 4 months in a row. 40 people went through it. And then I had no time because organizations started hiring me. So the fall was very busy, just meeting the needs of clients. And then I accidentally ended up subcontracting because I ran into a situation where I needed more people, and the people that I'd been training and certifying, so the program became a certification, I was able to then hire.
Wow.
And so beautiful ecosystem arose. I left the role where I was coaching for another company because I didn't have time. I grew a 6-figure company based on all new revenue streams in 8 months.
Wow.
So my business didn't exist. I mean, my business basically was all in person and it was gone. But then from like April through 8 months later, which isn't even the end of the year per se, I really had pulled it together, and I crossed 6 figures last year. Right now I'm at 2.5 what I made last year, and it's only halfway through the year. So it's just, the coaching is that I know this works.
Yes.
I'm the best testament. So this year I'm now working one-on-one with a handful of select people, and I have a mastermind for entrepreneurial women that I'm launching or relaunching really in a different way next year for 2022. So I'm very multifaceted, very multi-passionate. I do love producing events. I help organizations bring their events online with less stress and greater participant engagement. I also certify meeting professionals and speakers, become certified virtual event professionals. And I'm hired by those companies to work with them. And then I do the coaching and masterminds and business growth strategy conversations. And yeah, and I get to give back every week with an amazing community that hangs out with me.
Yes.
It's been such a pleasure.
That's beautiful. And I've really seen, so I've been following your trajectory over, I guess, the last year and a half. And I've really seen your business change thanks to the pandemic and, thanks to your hard work also. And you've really converted it from that whole in-person element to now, how do we do this virtually, and how do we support your client base, your audience virtually? Robbie, one of the things I do is I support leaders and executives to become better leaders and executives. And some of the problems people face in this new online world is the whole aspect of online networking and where to even begin. It seems like this mammoth task for some people. How, in your opinion, for an individual, for a senior leader, could one break it down to manageable bite-sized pieces in a practical element where they could network online? And what does networking online even mean for such a person?
I mean, there's sort of multiple levels of this. The first sort of basic level is something that I've been doing for years, which is nurturing your network. And there's a couple of ways to do that. The way that's existed for a while now is on social media. I think that you can compare this to in-person in a way. In person in my 20s, I went to everything. I went to 2 or 3 things a night.
Wow.
Boundless energy and no family, right? Like you just keep going. And then you sort of realize I should settle in. There's a couple of organizations I should dedicate more attention to and deepen those relationships. And that strategy is actually the smartest one at any age. Yeah. And I think that's true for online. So over the last 2 years or so, I have really, recognized expert, Doris community, Rex community has been one of the communities I have committed to over the last 5 years. Yeah. And I've gotten so much back from it. My friend Michael Roderick restarted a private group at the beginning of the pandemic, and I joined it again. And that's another community. In fact, every month I host a gathering for those two communities to come together where I facilitate a series of breakout rooms. And it's actually become quite moving and like amazing opportunities and connections have happened from it. But it's also a lot of fun and we laugh. We have a good time. So committing deeply is a really good strategy. Now, that doesn't mean you exclude yourself from anything new. It's just that when you're first testing out a new community, go 3 times in as short amount of time as you can, so that you go from being new to becoming a regular as quickly as possible. If you go 3 times to an event in person in 3 months or 3 times over 18 months, it's the same amount of energy, but in 3 times in 3 months, people are going to remember you. So similarly, don't be scattershot with your online connections. Like pick a few communities and really make sure that you tune in what's going on. And that doesn't mean you just go in and blast them with what you're offering, but you serve, you add value, you share resources, you join people's book launches, you point them in the direction of something awesome, you broadcast their stuff, you thank them publicly. I mean, you just give gratitude, right? And you ask for the help you need. You just really dedicate yourself to these communities. Then the other piece of that is how we can act now that there's so many virtual events.
Yes.
Now, even when I'm invited to a webinar where there isn't the in-person interaction, not the in-person, but the live interaction, I can still find ways to stand out. And my favorite way to stand out in these online spaces is to be the one who shares resources in chat. So if a speaker mentions a book, a podcast, a website, an author, whatever resource, I will immediately, without hesitation, find the link, drop it into chat with a little bit of a context note if it needs it. Now, if you become seen as the person who's always doing that, and then you occasionally share a link to your own content, that's not going to seem spammy at all, right? Because you're just a person who's offering value. And I don't always have things to offer that are my own. Like that's not how I'm going to stand out. This isn't my topic, but I can just listen and pay attention and jump in. And often speakers are just, I mean, I know this as a producer, they don't always have their links queued up. Like it's one thing if a speaker is planned ahead and they can copy paste, but a lot of times they haven't thought about this. Sometimes they just say things off the cuff. And me doing it, in fact, I've had speakers, presenters notice, facilitators notice me and call me out and appreciate me. So that takes no effort, no even pre-planning. It's just making a decision to be really, really present. And in ways I kind of liken it to live tweeting, because for some, live tweeting seems like a major distraction. But for me, it was a way for me to actually focus more on what was going on in the room because I was listening for the tweetable soundbite. Similarly, I am less distracted because I'm listening for what resources I can share. I'm less likely to be multitasking than I would be if I was like half listening with half an ear while doing 3 other things. If I'm listening for a way to show up and add value, then I have to sort of be much more present. So I've actually found it's really helpful for me. It's also helped me combat any kind of Zoom fatigue that others might be experiencing because I feel very much in the moment, very present. So those are the kinds of things, both the social media connections and like committing to sort of regularly showing up and writing notes in other people's posts and boosting other people's posts. I mean, one of my strategies is that all my afternoon LinkedIn posts are other people's content. So every morning I post something that's my content, and every afternoon I look up through what's going on in my network, and I'll actually queue things up over the next week. I'll look to see what's going on. I'll think, okay, it won't all be one day, but I'll just gather things together, and over the next week or 10 days, I'll have things come out every afternoon. Write a little quick note, tell people to check it out, tag the person who wrote it.
Yeah.
That doesn't take anything, and it's adding value. So those are the kinds of things I think about.
That's genius and super simple also. sharing the love. And Robbie, I remember years ago when I was, early on in my career, I went to a talk about best practice networking and all of that. And the big takeaway from me then was networking is about giving, it's not about taking. And that's
Mhm.
everything that you have just spoken to in all of these practical tips. So if you're on a webinar, be the one who shares the resource or links or whatever. Listen to the sound bites to help you be more present. I love your idea of in the morning you share your content, and then in the afternoon on LinkedIn or social media, you share other people's content, which is true to you. So you've obviously done your research, you're constantly learning yourself also, but you're creating genuine connections in that respect then, and not being strange. Some people find it awkward online, but this is a real genuine way of connecting with someone and actually showing that whatever they said resonated with you.
I actually have an example of this. Every Monday, every Monday morning, I share an article that's about Zoom from a major publication like Forbes, Inc., Fast Company, HBR. And I actually send a friend request, a LinkedIn request to the author a couple days before. And I say, I really appreciated your title of article. I'll be sharing it on Monday with my network. I noticed we had several mutual connections, in particular so-and-so, and I thought I'd reach out and see if we can connect. First of all, I've done a good job over the years because I've never not had connections to these authors, the contributors for these major publications. And I think every single one of them has connected with me, which just furthers my network. And then a few have written me really nice notes back. I then tag them when I post it. I've had a few of those articles get mini viral. Like I think one of them had, I don't know, 385,000 views or something, which for me is huge. I have no idea why. But then I'll often, if it even gets like over 10,000 views, I'll just go back and like write a note to the author to let them know. I mean, they worked really hard on these pieces for more people to see it. And the first time I did this, it was for a Forbes article. And that person looked at my profile, saw what I did, and said, "Oh, I'm working on another piece. I'd love a quote from you." And so, like I don't do it expecting it to be a transaction. It's going to be like immediate or anything like that. Just like giving to the universe. But that was so fast. And I've had a few other inquiries that way. And I just think these are people who are actively writing. I'm clearly another source for them. And we're starting to build a relationship, and sometimes I end up sharing the same person's stuff over and over again because they're writing in my space. So it's great, and it's not hard at all. And it's gotten me to really look at a lot of the current content that's out there. And when I get an opportunity to write for HBR, I now know what's out there and can think about what I can do to fill in, what's missing that I can say.
So that feeds your brain and it's expanding your network. And Robbie, we often have this phobia or fear, whatever it is in our monkey minds that, oh, I can't contact blah, blah, they're so, we put people on a pedestal. We are all humans, which is what you've just shown in this simple example again of whatever articles resonate with you, you'll contact the author beforehand, you'll build a relationship there, and then you'll share their content. I mean, what a beautiful way to do it. Okay, simple tips there. Thank you so much. In terms of someone who is trying to develop their career or become a recognized expert internally, in their wherever they're working internally, do you have any tips in relation to how they can stand out, especially on the platform of LinkedIn more so, Robbie?
Well, I think, we were just talking about LinkedIn's about sharing your own content, sharing other people's content, and doing so consistently, making yourself a content calendar, deciding maybe what kinds of content. Like I just told you, every Monday, I'm going to share an article.
Yep.
Every Tuesday, I'm going to share a video of me reading or performing my weekly email, which is a short story with a business or life lesson and a your challenge this week section. So I do that as a video. Every Wednesday, I'm sharing my current podcast link and last week's and tagging those two guests. Thursday and Friday are Zoom tutorial videos. And if I know that, and that didn't happen overnight, right? But like over time, that's the current state of things. And I now have a bank of content. So currently I'm actually working on a new book, which is a compilation of my weekly emails from the last 3 years, and a book about 20,000 words that I wrote and never published about relationship-based business strategies. And I needed to slow down my content creation, but it's okay because I have this bank. And so I'm able to repeat, I'm calling them encores. I'm able to do encores of my content because not everyone in my network has seen it. So I'm giving myself sort of a 3-month to both move and work on this book and get settled in. So, but yet I'm still out there sharing on a regular basis a lot of content. So I think that's one really important strategy, is not to be so stressed out where you're like writing something the night before every time or day of. But I also really want to talk about hosting.
Okay.
If you're trying to stand out, one of the best things you can do is gather smart people in a room and help them meet each other. And you do not and should not be the smartest one in the room, but just creating a space where conversation can happen and being that host, being that convener is a thing that everybody values. And particularly when we've had so few opportunities for that kind of true connection. My reasons for doing virtual production and virtual events is that I believe events are about content and connection. And that's why we got on planes. That's why we traveled far distances. It wasn't just for content. It was for the possibility of meeting other great people. When virtual events became synonymous with events, we needed to find a way to fulfill that promise. Yes. And so that's how I sort of approach this. And that's what my clients who work with me, I tend to work with a lot of national and statewide advocacy organizations. So they're very mission driven. They want their people to connect around an issue. But you can do this on a much smaller scale. You can even just do it, invite 6 people to meet with you around some topic. And the thing that's great about it, it doesn't have to be your content. You don't need to be a book club. You can be, hey, we all just watched this virtual summit. Let's get together and talk about it, right? You could leverage other people's great content, but you add extra value by inviting people to connect or by forming, a discussion space of some kind. Either that can be on LinkedIn, starting threads about content that you're watching and inviting other people to chime in, or bringing people into a space like a virtual event and hosting it that way.
Genius. So many tips there, Robbie. Thank you so much. I have one final question for you before we close off. If you had a magic wand, what is one way that you would change the way of the workplace?
Well, I think that I would find ways for us to continue to allow a hybrid of in-person in the office and working from home, but with clear communication about what the rules of the road are so that people don't feel isolated or left out of the office politics or the ability to get promoted or seen or valued. So I think there's some work to be done about how we truly integrate everybody, but we have learned a lot in the last year about how amazing it can be when people are given more latitude about how they do their work and how they bring themselves into the work. And I really want to not swing the pendulum back the other way to the extreme. I don't think we want to stay all at home. Some of us are longing to get back into the office for a lot of different reasons, but we probably all really appreciate the flexibility. And I'd like there to be some way forward that allows that to continue to happen and people continuing to find meaningful connection to their work and to their colleagues.
That's cool. And no doubt you're probably mulling over this and you may have some ideas also. So I don't think that this is our final conversation, Robbie. I'd love to continue the conversation sometime in the future as well, because I'm really seeing the evolution of what you're giving to the world. And there's always bits that we can all learn from.
Awesome. Thank you. I'd love to come back and have that conversation.
Cool. Thank you so much for your time today. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, my pleasure.